All right, so we're going to talk a lot more about the user interface designing of an app. So the objective is to create an app that is very visually appealing and also very easy to use. I just looked on the internet for a random image of an app UI. And as you can see here, this UI has a very modern design and it's very minimalistic. It doesn't have too much things going on here. And it looks fairly simple. However, there's a lot we can learn while building this UI. We're going to start from scratch. So I'm just going to select an empty activity. Okay, so right now we're going to ignore everything to do with the code because we want to focus entirely on building our UI designing skills. And first, I'm going to import whatever images that we might need here. As you can see, in our design here, we have an image here. I'm just going to put that banner here in my drawable. So now let's start designing. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to delete whatever we have here. Okay, so like I mentioned, the first thing we have here is our image. So we're going to bring in our image view. And this is the banner that I just imported. So I'm going to place that here. Right now, I'm not going to worry too much about how it looks on our screen. I'm just going to add all the elements that I need. So the next one is a text view, which is our login button. Sorry, not our login button, but our login text over here. And then we have two input text here. So as you can see, all of these icons with the bar on the bottom are input texts. So in our case, we're going to have this for the username, and then this one right here for the password. And then we're going to add a button. Just like that. So constrain this to the top, the right, and the left. And since I don't want to set a fixed size for our width, and I want it to match whatever our screen size is, I'm going to select match constraint. And you'll notice that even though our left and right is matching the constraint, our image right here is in the center. Okay, so let's talk about the different scale types that are available to us for our image. Okay, so for instance, let's say I scroll down to look for our scale type over here. Right now our image is centered in the middle like this. I can have it to the left, that would be fit start, and I can also have it to the right over here. But what I really want to do is have it stretched. So that would be fit XY like this. But I could also have it center cropped. So essentially it will center the image and then crop all the edges. But like I mentioned, what I'm trying to achieve is have it stretched to fit our device or to fit our screen. So I'll select fit XY here. And now, as you can see in our reference image, it's taken up almost half of the screen. So we're going to try to make the height of this image come all the way down to around this area over here. Instead of 264 that we have here, let's try a different number. Let's try 350. Okay, so now the height of the image is roughly where we want it to be. So now let's move on to the next item on our screen, which is this login text over here. So first of all, we're going to make this text constrained to the bottom of our image and to the left of our screen. And we can have some margins at the top, and let's put some margins to the left as well. And let's change the text size. So I'm just going to search for size. 34 looks okay for now. So as you can see, sometimes you might see SP, a measurement in SP, and other times you might see DP. So generally with our measurements, we use DP, which means display pixels or density pixels. But for text, we always use SP. So when you're entering a measurement, when in doubt, use DP. But if you're entering it for a text, you use SP. So just keep that in mind. Now we're going to also try to make this text here bold, because we can see that this is bold here. So I'm just going to search for bold, the bold attribute. And it looks like it's under text style. So I'm going to set it to true. And then finally, I'm going to just change the actual text and the color of the text. So first, I'm going to change this to say login instead of text view. Okay, and for the color, I'm just going to search for the color attribute. In this case is a text color. Okay, so this is the color I'm actually looking for. So that is fine. The only thing I can do to improve this is to make this slightly bigger and also add some more margins here on the left. So let's just do that now. The next thing I'm going to do is align these three items over here. So I could either use a constraint, which will look something like this. I just constrain this to the bottom of the login, this to the bottom of the username, and this to the bottom of the password. And let's use something else called the linear layout. Okay, so if we go to layout, you'll see that we have two different types of linear layout. And essentially what this thing does is group your items either horizontally or vertically. So let me show you an example. First, I'm going to drag this into my screen. So right here now, this is a horizontal linear layout. So if I put this item in here and then the button in here, as you can see, everything is grouped horizontally. And if I have a vertical linear layout like this, it automatically groups everything you place in there vertically. We're going to use our vertical linear layout for this. Keep in mind, you can also achieve the same thing with constraints, but I want to use vertical linear layout just to show you the options that you have. Okay, so I'm going to just delete the horizontal layout because I don't need that anymore. I was just using that as an example. And now for our vertical layout, I'm going to add constraints to it. So it's going to be constrained to the bottom of our login and then to the left and to the right of our screen. But now you'll notice that everything looks like it's pushed to the left of this layout over here. So in order to fix that, I'm just going to change the layout width for all of these items from wrap content, which means it's only going to take up as much space as is needed for the content. So we're going to change it to match parent, which means it's going to take up as much space as possible. And then I'll do the same here from wrap content to match parent. And then finally the same for the button. So the beauty of having this linear layout now is that if I wanted to add some type of margin or padding to all of the items inside, I don't have to manually add the margin for each and every single individual item. I can just select our layout here and then add the margin to everything in there. I've added a margin to the left of this, but let's make it a little bit bigger. And then keep in mind that we don't want a fixed width. We want it to match whatever our constraint is. So I'll change this to match constraint. Make sure that the margin on the top is similar to what we have here, 24. So now let's work on the items in here. Okay, so for our username, here it says username, it doesn't say name. So let's remove this text from here. So what you're actually using here is a hint. So basically if you tap username, it's going to clear whatever is here and then you can start typing. So that's what the hint does. So let's go ahead and add our hint text. So we have that for password and then we'll do the same for username. And our button should say sign in. So I'm going to change this from button to sign in. And if you notice, everything here is in all caps by default, but here it isn't. Let's say we're looking for something to do with capitalization. Okay. So as you can see here, we have text all caps. It's set to true, but I'm going to set that to false. Now you can see we have some rounded edges over here, okay? It's not necessarily a line like how we have here by default. And we can achieve that by changing the background of this item over here, okay? So let's search for background. I'm going to click this thing right here. Okay, so by default, Android comes with some images that we can use. So for example, if I wanted to use something that looks like this as our background, let me do the same for the other one as well. So as you can see, it looks fine. It's not bad. However, we're trying to achieve some rounded edge like this. I can't find anything here that is suitable for or looks something close to this. So I'm going to add our own custom rounded border to our drawable folder. So I'll just drag and drop. So this is basically the rounded border shape. So now if I search for an image, I should be able to find a rounded border right here. We can also import our own sign-in button image, but all the buttons have a feature or an attribute called radius or corner radius, which we can use to adjust the roundness of the button. So in this case, I'm going to try to see what 18 looks like. It looks fine. It looks almost like this. The only thing is the color is a little bit off. So I'm going to use the same color that we have for our login text over here, just so everything can remain consistent. I'll copy this color code, paste it under our background tint right here. Okay, so we're making some progress, but we're not quite there yet, because as you can see, we have some padding around our text here. And also our text seems a little bigger than it looks in our reference image. So let's correct that. I'm just going to look for text size, and then I'll make this 16. And as you remember, for text, we use SP. And I'll do the same for the password as well. And then I'm going to add some padding around our text. So I'm going to search for padding. If I enter some padding in here, it will add it on all 4 sides of our item over here, or our text over here. But if we want to be more precise with our padding, let's say we want to add more padding on the left and right than the top and bottom, just like how we have here. So we can add padding to the left specifically like this. Start and left mean exactly the same thing, and end and right also basically do the exact same thing. So whether I have this 24 dp here in our left or our start, is going to give us the exact same result, as you can see here. Okay, so I'll do the same for start and end. And then for our top and bottom, I'm going to have a smaller number, let's say 7 dp. And I'll do the same for our password over here. Okay, so we're almost there. Now you'll notice that here we have some spacing between the username and password and also the button. So we need to also add some spacing here, okay? In design, when we're talking about padding, we're talking about the space inside the element or the item. And if we're talking about margin, that is the space outside of the item. So in this case, we need to add some space outside this item over here. So we're going to look for margin. In this case, we want to add space all around. So we don't need to specify top, left, start, or end. We can just use a single value here. And then let's do the same for the other items as well. So right now it looks like everything is done, except we have this little bar right here at the bottom. We could either have this as an image that we place at the bottom, but we don't really need to do that. We're going to use a little trick here, which is to use some type of layout. I think any of these layouts will be fine, but I'm going to use our linear layout over here, constrain it to the bottom. And then what I'm going to do now is simply change the background color of this layout over here. So essentially this is an empty layout with a colored background. Okay, so before we modify the color of this layout, let's also modify the height of this layout. So let's constrain this all the way to the left and right. And then we're going to make the layout width match our constraints. And then for the height, we want something that is almost halfway between the bottom and the sign-in. So let's see if a number like 70 might work. Okay, that looks fine. And now all we need to do is change the background color of this layout over here, okay? So essentially this is going to be an empty layout with a background color. So let's look for this background attribute. Okay, so that looks about right. So let's go ahead and run our app over here just to see how it looks like in our emulator. Okay, so as you can see, it looks pretty similar to this. The only thing that I don't like here is the fact that we have this bar over here at the top. It kind of takes away from the design. So let me show you how to remove this bar, okay? So in our projects view, if you go to values, you'll see a folder called themes. So if I double click this, in our theme, it shows that we're going to have a action bar, okay? But I can change this here to no action bar. And of course, we have other options available to us, but I just want to remove this action bar from here. So now that I've modified my theme, if I relaunch this app, now as you can see here, everything looks almost the same as our reference image here. So as a bonus, let me show you something that I think is pretty cool, okay? So suppose you found an image on the internet like this and you want to create something similar to this, but not exactly the same, especially our banner image that we have over here. What you can do is go to labs.openai.com, okay? And then what we're going to do is basically upload our image so that we can get something similar to this, but not the same. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So now I'm just going to hit generate variations. And as you can see, just from this image over here, we've been able to generate some pretty impressive variations that we can use for our app instead of the one that we found on the internet. So for example, I can pick this one instead and then download this. And now we can have a similar but different style, and it will match the colors that we are already using for our app. And the benefits don't end there, okay? So I'm all about teaching you the easiest way to quickly design some impressive apps, okay? And if you're not great with Photoshop or any type of illustration software, or you don't have time to go outside and take photos for the images that you're going to use in your app, you can simply use this website over here and tell it what image you want, and then it will produce that for you. So for example, let's say I'm trying to create an Airbnb app, create an app that only books tree houses. Yeah, I know that sounds weird, but let's see if we can get an image of that. Okay, so this is my prompt over here. I'm looking for an image of a tree house overlooking a sunny beach. Let's see what we're going to get. And there we go. And as you can imagine, this is going to be very useful for any type of app that you build. So within a matter of just a couple of minutes, I just redesigned this login page for an entirely different app. So let's test this out. So I can enter a username, and then the password would also display as a password. And then this button clicks like it should. So as you can see, even though this UI looks very simplistic, we learned a lot of different things to do with user interface design.